Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm excited to show you how I do trees. I will be doing them with Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils. I do plan on showing the same technique with inktense, but it's essentially the same thing. The inktense does turn out a little bit different. So this is the watercolor pencil, and then the inktense, this is what it looks like. So the visual texture is just a little bit more visible. But the reason that I'm doing Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils is mainly just because I liked the color selection for what I wanted to do with the trees better than what was in my Albrecht Dürer, or in my inktense set, sorry. So the colors I'll be using for the tree trunk, I'll be using Caput Mortuum number 169, and then Bistre or Bister, I don't know, which is 179. And then for the foliage, I will be using 225 dark red, and then 121 pale geranium lake, and 129 pink madder lake. So those are the colors I'll be using. You're more than welcome to use those same colors or use your own colors, especially if you're coloring along with me on this particular picture, which is Romantic Country, the Second Tell by Eiry. Excuse me. All of the grass and water is done in inktense, and I do have tutorials on how I did those. But anyways, let me actually get into the tutorial on how I do trees. So I'm going to start with the foliage for this tree with the 225, 121, and 129. So I'm going to start with the dark color first, and anywhere that I want there to be shadows, I'm going to be adding that dark color. Now, I don't want this tree to be as dark as this one, so I'm going to be adding a little bit less of the dark red than I added here. And with this color, I'm using like medium hard pressure, so definitely a lot of pressure, and I'm just doing like kind of crazy circular motions just because I like the visual texture that it adds. I think it just kind of adds the feeling that it's a tree with foliage. Sorry about that. I'm first just going into everywhere that she has added lines, and then I will add a few of my own. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So yeah. Excuse me. I apologize if my voice is a little even quieter than usual. I'm getting over a cold, and it has been a doozy just because I've also had allergies mixed with it, so it's been fun. So I'll also be adding where the branch is overlapping the tree. I will be adding a little bit of the darker red just to give the effect of a little bit of shadow, like so. All right. Excuse me. Okay, so we're almost done with the darker red. I'm just adding in these bigger blank areas just like some more of the leaf where like there's branches overlapping the leaves so that it looks like, yeah. See, I also want to add kind of overlap right here. But I also want to keep it fairly light so this doesn't blend into this because I did add some of the darker red. I don't want that to blend in.
Oh, butterflies.
Also, my son, he's playing in the background, so you probably heard him. He's really excited about his stickers. So, yep. All right. So, and now that I've gotten the darker red in, I will go in with the medium red. Let's see, I want to bring this down just a bit more fast. Sorry, there's just like a few areas that I want a little bit more dark. Okay, so next in, I'll go in with the pale geranium lake, and I'll go on top of the dark red just because it helps to blend the two colors together so that you get a smoother transition. And this one I'm using medium pressure, so still hard, but not as hard as the darkest. And I'm just kind of following that same shape that I put in with the dark red. So it's pretty quick going for this part. Sorry, I was gripping my pencil too hard earlier, so now my hand is cramping up a little bit. Okay, so this one, so for right here, this one has the shadow, so I want the lighter red to be here, so I'm going to take this right here and bring it down this way, and then this one I'm gonna bring it up here, blend in a little bit there, same right here. I'm gonna bring it down. It looks a little wild and crazy now, but the Albrecht Dürers activate and blend very easily on this paper, so you won't have too much of an issue. Okay, bringing this one down like so. Okay, almost done with the medium red, medium pinkish red. So I want these to look like cherry blossom trees. So I hope that's what it looks like. I had this idea like, oh my goodness, it'd be so pretty because like these deers are in this pretty cherry blossom forest. And so I was looking up, like, is that actually something that is possible to happen? And it is. There's a cherry blossom forest in Japan where there's families of deer that live. So I thought it was pretty cool. So this picture looks very similar to some of the pictures that I saw online. So that was pretty awesome. Okay, next in, going with the light pink. And this one, I'm using medium soft pressure, not using that much. And again, I'm blending it more into the medium red. and I'm using bigger loop circles. The red ones were pretty tiny circles. These ones are kind of big. And just going in all of the blank areas. So this is the easiest step. All right. Oh, I don't want to forget this little part down here. I almost forgot that. Okay. So next up, I will be, oh, where did I put my brush? I will be using my number 8 round brush and my magic water, just regular water. And when I activate the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils, I want to make sure my pencil is wet but not super wet, because if it's too wet, then the water, it can get a little bit out of control as far as like the colors, just because watercolor is a very fluid media. So I will start on this area, and I will start in the light areas and then go work my way into the dark. And then when I start getting back to an area where I want it to be light, I will rinse my brush, wipe it off, and come back in. That way I'm not pulling too much of the red out into the pink. Because, yeah, if you can see, like, that just, like, bled. So it blends very, very easy just because of how fluid it is. So just why it's good to be careful with how much water is on your brush, which is why I prefer using this kind of brush over a water brush, just because I like having complete control over how much water comes out, and I just have a hard time controlling how much water comes out of the water brush. Also, just to help blend the watercolor pencils colors, I'm using quick, short, circular motions, and it also kind of helps just because I used circular motions to apply it, so it's kind of that same direction. Now, another thing I want to note is watercolor, just because it's a little wet right here, I don't want to risk this red color bleeding into this light area just because it's a really small space. So I'm going to come over here and work on this over here, and then by the time I get back over here, it will be dry enough for me to be comfortable putting water in this area, because watercolor is very, even when it's in pencil form, it's very sneaky, likes to sneak into other wet territories. Okay, I'm gonna rinse off my brush just because I want to blend this out, but I don't want there to be too much red. And then same here, just blending it down. And the one reason I like this is because I used lighter pressure on the light, it looks fairly smooth right here. And then in the darker areas, because of the pressure that I used, there is a little bit of texture. So you get that kind of like a nice marriage between smooth and textured. Just adds for some, I don't know, I think it looks cool. And then right in here, so this is all dark red, so I'm not gonna rinse my brush until I get all of this activated, and then I'm gonna rinse it and dry it off again, because I want to blend this just a little bit, and I want it to be fairly dry. I try not to mess with it too much though, because if you do mess with the paper too much when it's wet, it will start pilling, and that's not always fun. So I'm gonna do, while my brush is clean, I'm gonna do this lighter pink, now. And then come around to the darker area and blend it down. Alright, let me feel that. Okay, that's getting close. Almost there. So, come back over here. Activate it. I think this is fun because I didn't spend very much time doing much coloring. I'm letting, like, the pencils did a little bit of the work, but the brush is doing a lot more of that work, if that makes sense. So it's kind of nice. So it just helps feel like I'm getting more done. Okay, so yeah, get that. Get all of the super light area done. Because it's easier to go from, also I'm always going from light to dark just because the dark tends to overpower if you don't. So if you do want more of the darker color to be dominant, you can start with it, but it's easier to blend the dark into the light than the light into the dark just because of how watercolor works. Okay, so I'm gonna do, yeah, that's dry enough now. Also, sometimes if I'm not sure how dry my brush is and I'm working on a small spot where I don't want a big like pool of water to happen, I will just go like this onto my brush so I can feel and just pull some of that extra water off that I don't want on there. Alright, nearly done. Okay, I think that's a good indicator of how to do the foliage. Sorry. So I do want to show how I do the wood. I will go back to this and finish activating this after I show how I shade the wood. I'll start shading this wood and then show you how I activate it, just because I don't want these videos to be too long. So I'll show like the most of the process and then kind of the final result. So again, I'm using 263 and 179. For wood, I really like using a more purpley brown, just because I feel like it adds more depth to the shadows. So with the tree, again, she's made it very easy just because she's added all these extra lines in there. But with this purple, it's kind of a strong color, so I only go along the edge of where I want my dark to be. So maybe like a third or a quarter, depending on the size of what I'm coloring. So like right here, it's more a third to the next dark thing or halfway. And then right here where it's kind of a thinner space, I add less of the dark, and I'm using medium pressure. Right here, I'll just add like a tiny little bit. And actually, I'm gonna wait to shade in up here just because it's still wet, and I don't wanna, it's a little harder to shade on top and just like get into the details when it's wet. So I'll finish shading down here.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. So, kind of same with the dark for the foliage. This one, you're just essentially laying in where you want your shadows and your dark areas to be. So it's kind of more, once you get this laid in, everything else is pretty easy after that. This takes the most attention, I guess you'd say. Okay, and then down here, when it's transitioning from somewhere that I have in shadow and then I want to highlight, I'll just kind of like taper it off and then add this shadow here. Like so. Oops. And I mean, as you can tell by these other trees, it doesn't it doesn't look like it's a I mean, I guess it kind of looks like a Picasso. It doesn't look like I spent hours or anything on this. Which is the nice thing about coloring things that are in nature is they're not perfect. So you don't have to color them that way. At least that's what I think. I think it allows you a lot more just like freedom to have more movement in your coloring strokes. Okay, I'm gonna finish shading down here, and then I will add the next color. And then this part is tricky because I have this shadow here, but I also want a darker shadow here, so I will leave a little bit of space just so that they don't get muddled together. Okay, so now I'm gonna color up to here. And this part is really hard. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, I just realized I forgot to add color. I'll do that. So I just go in with a lighter color, and I'm using pretty light pressure and just going in quickly, and blending it into the dark color. So I do go over the top of it. It doesn't like, it doesn't really put too much of this color on the dark. Just because I want this wood to be kind of like a lighter wood. So I was looking at pictures of cherry trees, and they're kind of a medium. And yeah, I love using like the watercolor pencils because they go on really smoothly and they blend so much easier than the inktense do. So I feel like there's more on these larger spaces, there's more forgiveness for large or like imperfect strokes. Okay, so that's the shading part, and then the water activating part. Now this part is a little bit more, it's going to take the most concentration out of everything for the tree. So I have my wet brush, and I'm going to start with a light and just make small strokes, and then blend it, and then rinse it. Or if I can sometimes pull off the pigment, which is probably not the best thing to do, touch your brush that much. Okay, and then I don't want to activate this part yet. Still want to work on down here. Again, starting with the light and then going into the dark. Okay, so when this happens, when it's like, oops, too much water and it pools, get your brush really dry and then just dab it on there, and it'll pick up some of that water and that pigment if it ever kind of goes out of control, because sometimes that happens. This one I am using more back and forth strokes just to go along with the grain of the wood, and then anywhere that I want to blend I will use circular strokes. Oh, see there's again. So it does take definitely more time and concentration. And when I try to stop at like visual break-offs, because even though the Albrecht blend much better than the inktense, you can still, especially on large spaces, get that overlap of where it dried and then where you activated it after it dried. And yeah, not pulling out too much of the dark pigment. Okay. And then, excuse me. We'll do this part. This is a little bit more tricky just because it's a smaller space. So I just use the very tip. Just very carefully. I will do only activate the light part and then go in onto the dark part and blend it out a little bit. Like so. And I don't know if you can tell, so I have like my shadows are, it's darker here and then medium here, but like I do have other parts of the bark that it's not necessarily a shadow, it's more just the visual difference that you get with bark, like right here. So I'll wait to activate that a little bit and just blend it out a little, so not as much as the shadow is blended. Alright, almost done. And then once I'm done filling this in, I will pause the recording and then finish activating everything just so you can see what it looks like as a finished result. Because for me at least, sometimes that helps just to see the overall look on the whole page. Alright, so I will pause it and be back in what's only a second for you. Alright, so this is what everything looks like colored in and activated with the watercolor pencils. I hope this video was helpful to anyone who wants to learn a different way to color trees, and hopefully for those who are getting to know their watercolor pencils a little bit better. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and happy coloring!